It's actually quite spooky how similar my presentation is to Andrea's, so hopefully you stay awake. But similar to the story just before, we've just recently, August last year, so nearly a year, have taken on the lease at Perup Nature's Guesthouse. That's what I'm here to talk about. So first of all, just a quick little spiel about the Blackwood Basin Group for people who don't know. So we are a registered not-for-profit. We're actually based in Boyup Brook, if people know where that is, hopefully. It's country music capital of Western Australia. And the Blackwood Basin Group has a 20-plus year history, and I'll call it a very wide and varied history, and it's been a very rapid pace of change, probably in the last 5 or maybe less years, probably similar to a lot of the other groups here. In our heyday, we had 20-plus staff members, and at the moment we have 5 very part-time staff members, probably with about a FTE equivalent of about 3 people. So we've had a big change in staff and in capacity over the last 20-odd years. We used to do work that spanned the whole Blackwood catchment, so down from Augusta all the way up into sort of the Dumble-Young, Shire of Kent sort of areas, but now we've really contracted our focus to the middle catchment area, and quite contentiously, Perup Nature's Guesthouse is actually in the Warren catchment. This is one of those strange things with Landcare, that you're very specifically based in a catchment, and this is in the Shire of Boyup Brook, but it's actually in the Warren catchment. It's one of the things I might touch on a bit around perceptions on what you can and can't do as a Landcare group. It's been one of the funny little itches that people like to scratch, to say that it's not really our job to run the place. So interesting. We're not affiliated with the Boyup Brook Shire, but we do receive some funding from the Shire. We receive grants from various bodies, probably similar to most other groups here. We have no long-term secure funding, so our staff are contracted on a fixed-term rate, on a fixed-term basis. And just recently, this is the first time we've gone to 6-monthly contracts instead of 12-month contracts. So this is the sort of framework or environment that our staffing is in at the moment. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a flavour of where we're at and why we are where we are. And I'll try not to turn this into an absolutely shameless self-promotion of Perup, but maybe you might want to stay by the end of it if I convince you. So I thought I just generate a bit of thinking around sort of where we are as an organisation, but potentially where you might be as an organisation. And I've only been in Landcare for the last 12 months, and so this is coming from a sort of an outsider looking in. So do any of these terms describe you or your organisation? Reactive and following the fashions. This is something I hear people talk about a lot, and also something I think in my own mind. It's like, why are we doing that? Because that's what we can get funding for. And I think that's really restrictive. It's not necessarily effective. It's not necessarily what's important for your region. And Landcare, the whole vibe of Landcare is you're doing something that's important to your local community and your local region. But if the state government or the federal government is saying that, you know, it's a particular type of threatened species or a particular Landcare issue that's the issue of the day, then that's not necessarily a rewarding or an effective thing for your organisation to be dealing with. So following the trends, and another one there would probably be not being able to commit to long-term projects. So you start a project, you finish a project and it's done. And you probably hear it, we hear it a lot from our volunteers, and a lot of the reasons why we have problems maintaining our volunteer networks is because they don't like following the trends. So when the project finishes and they've really developed this good feeling or this connection with a particular space or a particular issue, then you have to move on to the next space or the next issue. we lose our volunteers because they kind of just think, well, what's the point? It's not worth it. It's not fun anymore. Insecure and underemployed. I can speak personally, so I work part-time. I'm the program manager at the Blackwood Basin Group, and I work less than 3 days a week, and I'm supposed to maintain a workforce of 4 other people who also work very part-time, and for some people that works really well. We've got a very flexible working arrangement. We've got single parents who work for us, and also it works very well in our community and for myself personally because a lot of our staff members run farms as well, so or their partners run farms and they're the helper on the farm. So it's actually really good to have that flexible working arrangement, which is brilliant. But when you don't know from month to month or 6 month to 12-month contracts where you're going to be, what you're going to be working on, suddenly finding out that you're supposed to be the expert in sustainable agriculture or pest management when I'm a hydrogeologist. So it's sort of, you sort of have to move around and you can't necessarily employ someone to work 3 hours a week on a particular issue that's in their particular area. So these are the sorts of problems, and sort of this insecurement and underemployment sort of spins around with the reactiveness and the following the fashions. So that's something that I've definitely experienced and see other people experiencing. And probably fatigue, tiredness, powerlessness. I guess you could probably chuck in there frustrations, being ineffective, inefficiencies. These sorts of terms I hear all the time and in my own head as well, not just what other people are saying. So, and I think all these terms, I think, well, I hope some other people aren't going through it all, but that this is something certainly the sort of spiral of sadness going on at the moment. But sort of on a bit more of a positive note, if you really think about, well, what is the alternative, where would you rather be? For our organisation and hopefully for other organisations, similar thinking, I want funding for what is important in my region. So if I have a landowner come to me and say I've got a real problem with sharp rush, then I want to know that I can actually help them with that problem, and I can't turn them away and say, well, I'm sorry, we can't do that. Or if farmers have got problems with salinity and they really want to plant saltbush, well, oh, sorry, we can't get funding for saltbush. But that turns them away, and then they, that's a lost opportunity for somebody who's actually willing to engage in land care. I want secure and I want adequate employment. This one maybe just for me, but I'm a real planning and future person. I like to know the bigger picture. I want a strategy. I want a medium and long-term strategy, and I want to know where I'm heading as an individual, but also as an organisation. So I want to be part of that team, part of that planning, part of that journey, and I want to know where we're going, and I want to know how we're going to get there. I want to do something valuable, and I want to feel valued. So I find a lot of the work that we do often is just a tick and flick. I don't feel like it's adding a lot of value. I don't know how many times, even in 12 months, we come to an end of a project and we go, oh, we've got a couple of $1,000s left over. How do we blow that money? Because we're not giving it back. That's not effective. It's not valuable. It's not... I've come from industry, and for me, that whole mindset of just spending money because you've got it in your bucket, it just absolutely appalls me, and I find it very, very frustrating. Sort of a bit lame at the end there, but I want to have control over my destiny. So, if things are crap, then what are we going to do about it, right? We're going to sit around and whinge about it, have a couple of too many wines in the evening, or is there something that we can actually do? And similar to Katanning Landcare, we were presented with an opportunity that we really couldn't refuse. We didn't know what we were signing up for, but we really couldn't refuse. It was make or break, and it was just such a great opportunity. So I guess the ultimate question for us and also for other groups is self-funding your not-for-profit an unrealistic fantasy, or could you make it a reality? And we're trying to make it a reality at the Blackwood Basin Group. So our self-funding idea was to take over the management of Perup Nature's Guesthouse. Show of hands, how many people have actually been to the Guesthouse? Okay, quite a few, so probably about half. I was born in Bunbury. I grew up mainly in the hills in Perth, and I'd never heard of Perup before I started working at the Blackwood Basin Group. For people who haven't been, probably the more common similar place that people know about is Dryandra. But with the exception at Perup, there's no fences around the guest house, so you are literally effectively walking in a zoo. It's quite magnificent. I've done a lot of work on Barrow Island, and I see it being a very similar place to Barrow Island, where you can just walk around and you are just amongst native animals. It's quite remarkable. So our idea was to take over management from Parks and Wildlife, and our ideal is to be able to increase not just the environmental outcomes for our area, but also the educational outcomes and, really importantly, the economic outcomes for our area. We're in quite a depressed economic area, middle of nowhere, and that's one of our major challenges, especially taking on a tourism venture. We are in the middle of nowhere. Like, you have to go to Perup because you're going to Perup. You don't just happen to pop across it when you're just going out and doing your chores or going on a drive. So, and quite excitingly, this idea was actually recognised by the Regional Australia Institute. We were a top 10 finalist in their recent light bulb moment competition. Unfortunately, we didn't win, but we were the only WA finalist, so we were quite pleased with that, for it to be recognised in that way. So I guess it's up to us to make sure that we are actually making a proper go of it and actually be a good idea. So what exactly is Perup, and what was our idea? So we're 3.5 hours from Perth. Anyone who's sort of in the tourism-y kind of space, apparently 4 hours is the magic number. If you're within 4 hours of a major population area, then you're kind of on the map, so to speak. Anything more than 4 hours, it's really an effort, like a super effort to get there. So we're pretty much spot on halfway between Bunbury and Albany. We're surrounded by the Tone Perup Nature Reserve. As I mentioned before, rare and threatened and endangered, particularly mammal species, but also there's also quite a few bird species as well there are a few weirdo bird people out there that love to come and visit us. Not just the weirdo mammal people, but and the orchids are just coming out at the moment too, if anyone's into their orchids. So Shoreditch, Woylies, the wow factor is the numbats. You can see numbats quite readily around if you know what you're doing in the nature reserve. And I'll quickly say we've got the capacity to sleep up to 50 guests. It's eco-friendly accommodation. We're completely off-grid, solar power, rainwater. We've got 3 main accommodation buildings that sleep 7 to 10 people, ranging in price from $120 to $180 per night. We also have a bunkhouse that can sleep up to an additional 23 people. So the place was actually built sort of to cater for large school group type camps originally, and then there are a few more intimate, high quality cottages that you can also stay in with yourself, your partner, or your immediate family. We've got 5 walking trails, 1 to 4 k's long, several more tracks in the surrounding park. We're currently just starting to offer guided night tours, spotlight tours, with the idea that the next step will be to actually branch out into walking tours during the day, and trying to capitalise on the stuff that you can do during the day, not just the stuff you can see at night. Very quickly, for people who aren't familiar, Perup's actually a remarkable place from a West Australian and also national perspective, in that in the 70s it was discovered somewhat by chance that there was a real connection between mammals or population numbers and fire. And it was found that after fires, the Tamar wallaby population crashed, and it was subsequently found that that was because of foxes, and it seems obvious now, but it was really not understood at the time. So 1080 trials were first sort of conducted in this area in the 80s. Calm had wild weekends out there. Ecotourism started in the area. The place was redeveloped, and as I said, in August last year, we took over the lease. Our business model, we're in partnership, so we have taken a lease from Parks and Wildlife. We get a little bit of money from the Shire of Boyart Brook to increase tourism and visitation to the area. All profits will be reinvested in Landcare projects. Sounds simple: increase visitors, increase revenue, increase opportunities, and increase awareness. So simple, but not so simple at the same time. I don't need to spend too much time on this because the challenges that we've experienced are pretty much spot on what Andrea said. And big one for us is the capability and capacity of our staff, and also staff turnover. We've had a huge staff turnover in the last 12 months. I won't go into it too much, but our early projections were incredibly unrealistic. We had anticipated certain occupancy rates, which were just, even as a fully functioning, Hilton type arrangement, we would never have received that amount of visitation. And unfortunately, from a profits perspective, we're not there yet. We're well and truly operating in the red, but that's largely due to the number of hours that we're spending trying to promote the place. Recommendations, similar again to what Andrew said, but if you seek advice, listen to it. We've actually been told probably 2 or 3 times certain things and we haven't listened, and we're slowly starting to understand that we should actually listen. And probably have a plan and stick to it. And you need to have a little bit of flexibility and a little bit of reactivity, but if you have a particular business idea, have a think about your contingencies. If it costs more and takes longer, is that going to kill you? And I think that's really important because even coming from sort of a more commercial background, you always anticipate that things are going to cost you less and be quicker than they actually are. And that's just a reality. So if you double it out, what does that mean for your idea, and will that cripple you? So that's sort of the space we're in at the moment, and we've got a very conservative committee, and because things are taking longer, people are starting to panic. But if we had a proper plan and we knew what was going to happen and we had all these different projections, then it might be different. Similar to before, your idea needs to mean something to your group or to your community. You need to understand how your group can actually deliver your idea. And for us as well, it's understanding market and competitors, because ecotourism is a really flooded market and we're in the middle of nowhere. We need to attract people with a certain experience, not just offer them a bed to sleep the night in. So please come and visit us soon. We are right in the middle, or sort of to the edge of the Franklin wine region as well, so that's something that we're trying to capitalise on. If you know anyone who is getting married anytime soon, brilliant wedding venue, completely private. You can have the whole place to yourself for up to 50 guests. And special offer for one-time only offer for WA Landcare Network attendees. We have a special promotion code if you want to write it down, WALN 2018. 20% off if you come and stay with us before the end of the year. So get on our website. It's a brand new website that we got some money from Southwest Catchment Council to upgrade. And we're really keen, especially for people to visit from your backgrounds, because we've been getting lots of really good and effective feedback from people on how to actually improve the facility and actually improve the educational offering that we're giving at the facility. So come visit us soon, and we'd love to have you stay with us. Thank you.